And 2 virtual. Let's see if there's somebody else. Commissioner Blanchard's supposed to be here, but maybe he'll join us in a little bit. There we go. Okay, we've got just a quick work session this evening. We've got historic preservation update from Josh Wilson, and then we'll do agenda review, and then we'll get the party started. So take it away, Josh.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission. Here tonight just to kind of briefly give a summary of a code amendment related to historic preservation that the city has proposed. It's presented as a work session tonight because it does specifically deal with historic preservation, and they will recommend directly to City Council. But we certainly want to keep this commission updated on all proposed code changes in the city and as they relate to development. So to give some background on the issue, unfortunately, we've seen an increase in unpermitted activities in our historic districts, including demolition of structures, unpermitted work, removal of trees and things like that. So this unpermitted work has caused a great deal of concern among residents, registered neighborhood associations, and preservation groups, obviously. And the shared concern among these groups has been that we don't have a strong enough deterrent in code to prevent these sort of actions. So currently such complaints generally go through code enforcement. Code enforcement works with the legal department on prosecuting a case if warranted. So we would propose to add some penalties and provisions in the zoning ordinance that give us some direct control over these activities and how they're addressed. So the new code provision, it could require a delay of up to 180 days during which all work on a project where illegal work was performed had taken place. During this time, staff would prepare a premature alterations report. This report would identify the extent of the violations, the severity of them, recommend mitigation or rehabilitative measures that could be taken on those actions. And then it would be scheduled for a hearing before the Historic Preservation Committee for action. They could approve the report, they could modify the findings and requirements of the report, or they could deny that premature alterations report. And that would be an appealable decision to City Council. In our dealings with builders, homeowners in the current building environment, we have found that this time delay is the greatest deterrent. Currently, code does allow up to a $1,000 fine if the legal department was to take it through prosecution. This potential delay of projects certainly carries a bigger stick than a small fine in today's building environment and the way property and home values are right now. So an important provision in this is that the planning director can waive the premature alterations report for minor infractions. This would be things that could be easily remedied. Wrong windows installed, some inappropriate materials in terms of trim or siding were installed that could easily be removed and replaced if the applicant was in agreement with that. And the intent of this waiver is just really to prevent overload of the Historic Preservation Commission, not dealing with every minor infraction that we have identified in the city. So at their hearing on September 27th, the Historic Preservation Commission did recommend approval to City Council of the code amendment. They did not include it in their formal motion, but they did request that staff prepare a summary report essentially of how many of these waivers the director is granting, kind of checks and balances, just to make sure they're comfortable with those waivers being approved. And then we would present those to the HPC at their monthly work session. So with that, we just wanted to kind of give a quick little summary of the amendment, keep you guys apprised of progress we're making towards addressing these violations. And I can stand for any questions if you have any.
Thank you, Josh. Anybody have any questions? Okay, I think not. Thank you so
Okay,
much,
thank
Josh.
you.
Yeah, really informative. Thanks for keeping us in the loop.
Have a great evening.
You too.
All right, so we can just jump right into agenda review. So we've got our September 13th and September 20th minutes to review and approve. Then number 1, PUD 21-41. I don't need to be on here twice. Okay. PUD 21-41 on Bogus Basin Road. You all heard this on September 20th. They'd requested deferral to October 4th and are now, and then you deferred them last week to today. Now they're requesting deferral again to November 8th. And you would have seen that request in the late correspondence packet. Number 2, PUD 21-42. This was deferred from last week. This is a PUD at Milwaukee and Ustick for 10 multifamily units. We do have neighborhood opposition, so we will be hearing that one tonight. Number 3, CAR 21-18, sub 21-21, and sub 21-42 on Goldenrod Avenue. It's a rezone and 2 subdivisions for residential subdivision. We do have neighborhood opposition, so we will be hearing that one this evening. Number 4, PUD 21-45 is a modification to a PUD to increase or to add 5 units to a project. We are recommending approval. We believe the applicant might be opposed to conditions, but it might be good to check. We might be able to do consent, but we might be hearing this one. So we should expect a plan to hear this one, but we can't ask the applicant if they're in agreement or not. Number 5, PUD 21-46 and sub 21-45 is a 2-unit PUD, basically a duplex trying to become 2 townhomes. We are recommending approval. We're not aware of any opposition, so we can try for consent. Number 6, SOS 21-23 at 8410 West Vincent Street. This is a waiver to the subdivision ordinance for requirements to build curb gutter and sidewalk. We are recommending denial, so we will have to hear that one. Number 7, CUP 21-44 is a CUP for a 90-foot tall communication tower on Victory Road. We are recommending approval. We're not aware of any opposition, so we can try for consent.
And is there no neighborhood association
I
there?
believe we must have printed off the wrong version, so I will get that information to you.
Okay, cool, thank you.
Number 8, SOS 21-22 on Shields Avenue has been withdrawn. We should just make note of that at the beginning of the hearing, but no other actions needed. Number 9, CAR 21-27 and CUP 21-48 is a rezone and a height exception on Ann Morrison Park Drive. We are recommending approval. We are aware of some neighborhood opposition, so we will be hearing that one tonight. And Madam Chair, I'll get you that information as well.
Thank you.
Number 10, CUP 21-49 is a CUP for a childcare center on Finley Avenue. The site was not posted properly, so we're needing to defer this to November 8th.
I feel like that's like the 3rd time in recent memory that we've seen a a deferral for something like that? Is that something that's
It-
been addressed internally?
Yes.
Okay,
Lord.
great.
Yes.
That's all I need to know. Thank you.
And lastly, number 11, PUD 21-47 and sub 21-46 is a 2-unit PUD, 1209 West Howard. We are recommending approval. We're not aware of any opposition, so we can try for consent.
Great, thank you.
And that's our night.
Commissioner Moore and Squires, we're running lean tonight, so everybody is going to have to get involved tonight. I was going to give you guys a pep talk, but since you're online, that'll have to do. Thanks.
All right, so we've got 15 minutes until,
Great. See you
15
guys back
minutes.
in 15.
okay, thanks. All right, good evening, everyone. And welcome to the Boise City Planning and Zoning Commission public hearing. A few things to start out with for tonight's proceedings. Everyone from the public entering the hearing virtually has been automatically muted and cannot speak. As the item you're interested in comes up for discussion, you'll be called upon and unmuted. There is a chat function in Zoom. This is not part of the record and should only be used if technical difficulties arise. Our procedures for public hearings begin with a presentation from the planning team. Then we'll go to the applicant and then the representative of the Registered Neighborhood Association, followed by questions from the commission. After that, we proceed to public testimony, starting with those who are in person, then who signed up on the sign-up sheet online in advance, and then anyone else who raises their hand virtually. If you are attending through telephone, you can type in *9 to raise your hand. Each member of the public is allowed up to 3 minutes for testimony. We are strict with this time as it is limited in code. And finally, the applicant is allowed up to 5 minutes for rebuttal, after which the hearing will be closed and the commission will deliberate and render a decision. Madam Chair, you have the floor.
Thank you, Celine. We are citizen volunteers appointed by the mayor and approved by the city council. We make final decisions on conditional use permits, variances, and appeals, and recommendations to the city council on subdivisions, rezones, annexations, and code or comprehensive plan amendments. Any decision made tonight may be appealed to the city council, provided that the appeal is filed within 10 days of this hearing. In order to file an appeal, you must have given written or oral testimony at tonight's meeting. So that's why it's important you give your name and address when you testify tonight. We utilize a consent agenda. This means that if the applicant agrees and with the staff report, and if there is no public opposition, the item will be placed on the consent agenda. All items that are placed on the consent agenda are approved with one motion without further public comment. For items not on the consent agenda, we will hold a full public hearing in the order just detailed a few moments ago with staff, applicant, neighborhood association, and then the public testimony. Thank you all for attending tonight, and will the clerk please call the roll?
Stead,
Here.
Squires,
Here.
Blanchard,
Here.
Moore. Here. Danley,
Here.
5 present, 3 absent.
Okay, the first item to address tonight is item number 8 has been withdrawn. That's item number 8, SOS 21-22 for MJV Properties LLC at 10386 West Shields Avenue as a waiver to a subdivision ordinance requirement to construct curb gutter. And that has been withdrawn, so we will not be hearing that item tonight. Next, we will take a look. We've had a request for deferral of item number 1. This is PUD 21-24 for Slitcher Urgent Architecture, deferred from October 4th, 2021 at 2588 North Bogus Basin Road. This is a conditional use permit for a planned residential development comprised of 8 studio apartments and approximately 17,000 square foot addition to an existing building. They're requesting deferral to November 8th. Is there anybody present tonight who would not be able to return to testify on the November 8th hearing that would like to do so? Okay, seeing no hands online or in person, I will entertain a motion.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Danley.
I move that item number 1, PUD 21-41 be deferred to the November 8th Planning and Zoning Commission meeting.
Second.
Great, we have a second from Commissioner Squires. If there's no discussion, will the clerk please call the vote?
Stead,
Aye.
Squires,
Aye.
Blanchard,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
Danley,
Aye.
all in favor, motion carries.
Okay, additionally, we have a request for deferral, item number 10. This is CUP 21-49 for the Barnyard Daycare and Learning Center at 3658 South Findlay Avenue. This is a conditional use permit for a childcare center for up to 180 children. Is there anybody, they're asking for deferral to November 8th. Is there anybody present tonight who'd like to testify on this item who would not be able to return to that November 8th date? Please raise your hand or virtually. Okay, seeing none, I'll entertain a motion.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Danley.
I move that item number 10, CUP 21-49 be deferred to the November 8th Planning and Zoning Commission meeting.
Second.
Great, second from Commissioner Squires. If there is no discussion, will the clerk please call the vote?
Stead,
Aye.
Squires,
Aye.
Blanchard. Blanchard.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Manley.
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries.
Okay, first items for the consent agenda, I'm going to place the minutes from our September 13th, 2021 and the minutes from our September 20th, 2021 meetings on the consent agenda. Next item for consideration is item number 4. This is PUD 21-45 for Glancey, Rockwell and Associates at 4420 North 5 Mile Road. This is a modification to previously approved planned residential development to add 5 single-family dwellings. Is the applicant present? And are you in agreement with the terms and conditions of the staff report? No. Okay, then we won't be adding that to the consent agenda. Next item for consideration is number 5. This is PUD 21-46 for Mark's Land Surveying LLC. And also SUB 21-45 for Fossin Glendale subdivision at 3851 West Glendale Street. This is a conditional use permit for planned residential development comprised of 2 attached townhomes and a preliminary and final plat for residential subdivision comprised of 2 buildable lots. Is the applicant present? Ms. Marks? I think. Do we have an applicant present for item number 5? Please virtually raise your hand if you're online. Okay, I am not seeing that. Is there anybody present that would like to testify in opposition of item number 5 tonight? Okay, seeing none, then we'll place item 5 on the consent agenda. The next item for consideration is number 7. This is CUP 21-44 for JUB Engineers Inc. at 8248 West Victory Road. This is a conditional use permit for a 90-foot tall communication tower. Is the applicant, oh, sorry, at 8248 West Victory Road. Is the applicant present tonight? Great, I see a hand up there. And Jesse, are you in agreement with the terms and conditions of the staff report?
Yes.
Great. And is there anybody public tonight who would like to testify in opposition of item number 7 tonight? Please virtually raise your hand or so in person here. Okay, seeing none, then item 7 will be placed on the consent agenda. The last item for consideration is item number 11. This is PUD 21-47 for Rodney Evans and Partners, PLLC at 1209 West Howard Street. A conditional use permit for planned residential development comprised of 2 detached single-family homes. Also SUB 21-46 for Scouts Landing subdivision, a preliminary and final plat for residential subdivision comprised of 2 buildable lots. Is the applicant present? Mr. Semple? Great.
Yes.
And Mr. Semple, are you in agreement with the terms and conditions of the staff report?
Yes, we are.
And is there anybody present tonight who'd like to testify in opposition of item number 11 tonight? Please raise your hand. Okay, seeing none, then item 11 will be placed on the consent agenda and I will entertain a motion.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Danley.
I move that item number 5, PUD 21-46 and SUB 21-45, item number 7, CUP 21-44, and item number 11, PUD 21-47 and SUB 21-46 be placed on the consent agenda with each of their respective terms and conditions of each staff report, along with the meeting minutes from September 13th and September 20th.
Second.
Great, we have a second from Commissioner Squires. If there is no discussion, will the clerk please call the vote?
Dead.
Aye.
Squires.
Aye.
Blanchard.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Manley.
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries.
Okay, so up is item number 2. This is PUD 21-42 for South Beck and Baird, deferred from October 4th, 2021 at 3203 North Milwaukee Street. This is a conditional use permit for planned residential development comprised of 10 multifamily units. And we will start with staff. Please go ahead, Mr. Moser.
Thank you. Madam Chair, the applicant is requesting approval of a planned residential development consisting of 10 multifamily units in one building located at 3203 North Milwaukee Street in R2D zone. As you can see from the aerial photograph The site is located at the intersection of Milwaukee Street and Ustick Road. The surrounding neighborhood is generally comprised of residential with commercial and office uses located along Milwaukee Street and Ustick Road itself. In addition, adjacent to the west and north of the development is an office development. And as you can see from the site plan here, the project consists of a two-story building that steps down to single-story on the north and south ends. In summary, the project meets all the required setback, parking requirements, and height standards of the development code. However, I will note for the record that the parking lot will take access from an existing service drives, which are shared with the adjacent office developments. The site design provides all the required parking on site, which includes a mix of full-size and compact spaces. It will also provide about 71 square feet of open space per unit within the balconies and patio area. And the project will use energy conservation measures within the construction of the building as an amenity. There's also a public park about 1/2 a mile to the south along Milwaukee Street. Several letters were received by the planning team from the public, which expressed concerns of the project in terms of parking compatibility, open space, open space and traffic. To address these concerns, I would note that there is a cross-access agreement for the use of the service drives between the subject property and the office development. Also, the project provides more parking on site than what the code requires, and it does not exceed the parking maximum. And the parcel is relatively small, but each unit will provide open space, and there is a public park 1/2 a mile away. The project is compatible with the adjacent offices and provides a mix of uses, which includes office and residential at the intersection of two arterial roadways, which is encouraged by the comprehensive plan. The subject property is also located along a public transit route, which supports multifamily residential in this location. So in conclusion, the proposed PUD complies with all the required findings as per code, and the planning team recommends approval. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Moser. Next, we'll hear from the applicant, Mr. Gibbons. Please start with your name and address for the record, and you'll have up to 10 minutes.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, Commissioners. My name is Jay Gibbons. I represent the owner and South Beck and Baird here in Boise. Address is 2002 South Vista Avenue. I have a short presentation, and I appreciate staff's work on the project with this and reviewing the code and what have you. As David said, our location is on the northwest corner of Milwaukee and Ustick. It is a vacant parcel. It's lot 2 of the major subdivision, which was a commercial subdivision that was platted, was recorded 20 years ago. So we have 10 apartment units in a single building. It's a mix of, there are 4 single bedroom apartments and 6 2-bedroom apartments. Each apartment, as David said, has a private balcony or a patio on the ground floor, and those are on the Milwaukee side of the building, and we were encouraged to provide pedestrian connection to the sidewalk that exists on Milwaukee. So we've done that. It's zone commercial C1. We are going to be required to go to a DR with this application as well. As I said, it was recorded 20 years ago. All the access was approved to Milwaukee and to Ustick. ACHD is going to require some improvements to the Ustick side. It's already right in, right out, and will remain so on Ustick. There's a elementary school 750 or 60 feet to the north. It's sidewalked all the way there. And both road frontages have been approved. The Milwaukee road frontage does have a parkway that is just gravel at the moment. We anticipate improving that with a license agreement to put turf in there to really clean up that right-of-way frontage as well. And then Ustick is lawn already. It had trees at one point. The trees have sometime disappeared in the last 20 years. We are replacing those required trees. Thank you. This is the major subdivision. It was a 2-lot subdivision. Directly to the north, as staff represented, there's the Vision subdivision, which is similarly a 2-lot subdivision. There's an optometrist on one lot, and there's a mental health services building on the other lot, and we have a chiropractor on lot 1 of the majors. Both are very similar in nature in that all the parking and the access to the streets is a common easement, parking ingress, egress for the purpose of parking agreement, and was set into place with the plat itself. So our site plan, as you can see, is a very modulated building. It steps back from, as you get closer, it steps back to the west as we go closer to the intersection. There's an existing monument sign near that corner in an easement that is on the property, but out of the vision triangle. And we're trying to maintain maximum visibility at that intersection as it is. Next. So landscape plan, as you can see, we've added the trees along Ustick. There are 4 existing trees. There used to be 5. One of them, even in Google, the Google Maps, it looked like it was in poor condition. It was taken out. We'll be replacing that tree, and we are keeping the lawn and the berm that's along Milwaukee. Going to very minimally impact that with the sidewalk connection to each apartment, but beyond that, we have really present a really nice aesthetic landscape all around, and add trees in the parking islands and along the access drive off of Milwaukee to the north of us. As David said, we have 10 units. We need one parking place per bedroom, and we have that plus a handicap stall. So we have 17 totally on our property, as is, the parking for the other businesses. They're sufficient, their code required parking that is on their property as well. So we have the joint access drive that we expect to play nice neighbor. And if there are ever complaints, we'll be addressing those with the residents, because we don't want to impact the businesses. They've been there for a long time. They're the thriving businesses, and we want that to remain. It's just been, Mr. Majors had 20 years, could not sell that property for commercial property, and there were no takers. So we are working with him to propose multifamily development. So as you can see, our building, the 2 centerpieces are 2-story, and each end is a 1-bedroom apartment, and they are single story. So it steps down. The surrounding business buildings are all single story. We think it'll fit well with the aesthetic and complement each other. We do have a variety of colors, textures, and finishes on the building, and think it'll be very attractive. Next. And with that, I want to say thank you, and we're in agreement with the conditions that staff has placed on this application.
Great, thank you, Mr. Gibbons. Before we get to questions, I will just check to see, do we have a representative from the West Bench Neighborhood Association to speak on this item? All right, seeing none, then we will go to questions from the commission for staff or the applicant.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Danley.
I've got a handful of questions for both. My first question is, and I'm reading on page 144 of our staff report, it says that the project, and I'm reading verbatim here, the project complies with the density of the C1 zone of 43.4 units per acre. And the proposed density of the project is 18.5 units per acre, but we know you have 10 units. What I'm wondering is, what is the maximum number of units that this parcel could actually accommodate? You can take a quick stab at that, in that there's Roughly,
it's
sure.
a half-acre parcel. 10 is almost 20, so 20 would almost be 40.
Right.
But because it is in a business setting, parking is, and it is a very constrained site with the major streets on the side and shared parking or shared access and what have you, we didn't feel we could get 40 parking spaces.
Is it not possible to go up for the number of units and go down to install more additional parking subsurface?
I haven't looked into that per se. We were more concerned with minimizing the impact on the neighbors. I'm not sure, depth of groundwater or what have you that meant, that would potentially preclude development to the, underground per se, but I don't have an answer for that exactly.
Okay, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Danley.
The other question, another area I want to get to is the bulk of this is essentially fronting on Milwaukee, but Ustick is the primary arterial, the principal arterial. So we're thinking about this a little more holistically in terms of the massing of structure and how traffic works and all of that sort of thing. My question is it not possible to have some of the building? I mean, I know one part, but that's the step down. So in fact, the shortest part of the structure is actually on the Ustick portion of this intersection. Is it not possible to pull some of that massing and height towards the Ustick side as opposed to the surface parking lot that basically does front Ustick?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Danley. So we have a 10-foot setback on Ustick, and so that, and basically that you've got the 20-foot of parking, a 5-foot sidewalk. So you've got 25 feet that really you don't get much depth there if you were to turn it and make it L-shaped or what have you, because that is the narrowest part of the site.
Mm-hmm.
And Ustick being the principal arterial, that's part of the purpose. It's right in and right out already. It does have a concrete curb in the center to preclude left turn lanes.
Do we have any other questions?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Moore.
So what is, and this is a question for staff, minimum square footage for open space in this zone per unit?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Moore, the code requirement for a PUD is 100 square feet of open space per unit. In this case, they're also providing an amenity and the location of a public park, I think Morley Nelson Public Park, within a half-mile distance, substituted for that slightly less. I think they're at around 71 square feet of open space per unit. So with the amenities in the park, the planning team thought that the amount of open space was correct.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Moore.
Just a quick follow-up. So on our packet page, 140 in the amenity under the project proposal. So basically, and I think you kind of alluded to this just now, the energy conservation measures are intended to kind of be in substitution of some of those of the open space, I guess. Well, in addition to the park.
Madam Chair, members, Commissioner Moore, that is correct. And a PUD with an acre or more is required to have two amenities, and one of those could be energy conservation. And we also count in, even for a PUD of larger sizes, if there's open space or public parks nearby. So we thought with the amenity of the energy conservation, Energy Star, and also the public park, and also I think there is a school nearby too that has open space, that sort of provided the amenities that the code intended.
Yeah, thank you.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Danley.
I'm going to hit on this one more time. I just would like to get your general opinion on this. So this is a minor arterial and a principal arterial intersection right up on the corner, right? Is there an interest in adding the additional units that is accommodated via our code to get this thing to much more dense and many more units? I understand you have not examined the details and such, but is the biggest drawback, the biggest reason why maybe you didn't pursue a weightier project because of the relationship with the neighborhood around this particular parcel?
That, Madam Chair and Commissioner Danley, that's why we stayed to just 10 units. It's, in my neighborhood meeting, that I had with and it was well attended. All the business owners were there and a few other people from the neighborhoods. Their concern was we're blocking their visibility. And so, if we propose to we would have to change the entire way that the building looks, and then it becomes a major, then everything behind and north is majorly hidden per se. That's why we didn't do it.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I think I'm seeing no more further questions. Thank you. And with that, we will move to public comment. Do we have anybody that would like to testify on this item, either in person or online? Just please come on up if you're here in person, and please virtually raise your hand if you're online. Okay, seeing none. This would be an opportunity for the applicant to have a 5-minute rebuttal, but we haven't heard much opposition. Is there anything else you'd like to add, or would you like to waive that time?
Madam Chair, I appreciate it. I'm okay.
Great. Let the record show that they are waiving that opportunity. And with that, we'll close the public portion of the hearing, and the item is now before the commission.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Danley.
Let me see. Okay, I'll make a motion that that we approve item number 2, I believe it is PUD 21-42 with the terms and conditions found in the staff report.
Second.
Great, second from Commissioner Moore. Commissioner Danley, would you like to start the discussion?
I would. I'm going to try to be brief here. Honestly, I'm not a massive fan of the project, not because I don't think it is a good one per se, but because this is an arterial intersection, and we don't get these very often. And when we do get them, I feel like we have to get them right. They should be dense. They should be vertical. Literally giving a presentation to the Compass Board next week about this very subject of massing and its effect on transportation along our arterials, because our cities have the ability to have a bit of say when it comes to our transportation system, despite the whole ACHD thing. And it's in this very way that we have that ability. But where I'm going to give the applicant the benefit of the doubt, knowing Mr. Gibbons for quite some time and the reputation he has. And I know that you having held a meeting with the neighborhood association and knowing what their complaints or their specific issues are, going to go out on a limb here and give the benefit of the doubt to the applicant and recommend that we approve it as is presented to us this evening.
Great. Any further discussion?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Moore.
Totally agree with the density. I would be totally open to seeing something a little bit more dense here, but as it stands, there are limitations to that shared parking and the shared access. And I understand those limitations. And I know that going underground, that gets really expensive really quickly. Otherwise, in terms of the open space, I know that was some of the public comments. And while energy efficient appliances in my mind aren't necessarily a substitution for open space, I think the proximity to parks and the proximity to schools with open space, I think that is a sufficient substitution for open space on site in my mind, particularly for something like 10 units. So that I'll be supporting the motion.
Great. Okay. If there is no further discussion, then we have a motion on the table to approve PUD 21-42 for South Peck and Baird at 3203 North Milwaukee Street, a conditional use permit for planned residential development comprised of 10 multifamily units. Will the clerk please call the vote?
Sten.
Aye.
Squires.
Aye.
Blanchard.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Danley.
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries.
Okay, next up is item number 3. This is CAR 21-18 for Leaves 99 Investments LLC and Neil Collette, deferred from October 4th, 2021. Also SUB 21-21 for Garner Vine subdivision and SUB 21-42 for Taffy Downs subdivision. These are all at 12-371 and 12-553 West Goldenrod Avenue. We'll start with staff. Please go ahead, Kevin.
Thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission. As you said, before you is a request to rezone just over 13 acres from an A1 to an R1B zone located at 12-371 and 12-553 Goldenrod Avenue. Also included are two separate preliminary plat applications, one for Taffy Downs subdivision on the left there in yellow, which has 12 buildable lots on almost 5 acres, and the Gardner Vine subdivision in green, which has 13 buildable lots on 8 acres. So the properties are located over here in the West Bench, just west of Cloverdale Road and between McMillan and Ustick. As you can see here, the land use designation of this entire area is suburban, which does support the requested R1B zone. Directly adjacent to the properties are A1 and R1B zone properties, and with some R1C not too far away to the north and east. As explained in further detail in your project report, the planning team is supportive of the requested R1B zone. It'll match up with the surrounding neighborhoods and does provide for a predictable development pattern in the area. So as I mentioned earlier, we do have two separate preliminary plat applications submitted with these properties as they are under different ownership. The size of the requested lots is compatible with the requested R1B zone as they average around 15,000 square feet in size. Connectivity to the surrounding properties has been provided via stub street to the south, a common drive to the east, and an internal micropath. The applicants are in agreement with the recommended conditions of approval, save for the condition to detach the internal sidewalks. As you know, the planning team typically defaults to detaching sidewalks with new developments as they provide both increased safety and comfort for pedestrians, and in this case, the ability to plant street trees. I believe the applicants will be presenting an alternative to detaching the sidewalks, and I'd certainly be happy to answer any questions once we've had a chance to hear from them. We also did receive one comment from a neighbor after the deadline to get it over to you in your late correspondence packet. So I'll do my best to summarize the couple concerns they have, even though I do believe they're also signed up for speaking this evening. So the first was related to not wanting the connection to the south down there on Farlight Way. You can just see kind of peeking out of the bottom. It is worth noting that for that connection to take place, it would require the redevelopment of that property there with kind of I think it's almost an acre in size to make that connection. The other comment was a desire to see a new fence be installed around the entirety of the properties. Much of the property is already backed by existing home with fences, so the planning team didn't really see a need for this condition, though it certainly could be added at the discretion of the commission. So with that, as detailed in your project packet, the planning team is supportive of the request as they comply with the standards of approval, and all commenting agencies have approved of them with various conditions of approval. And as a reminder, the commission is a recommending body for all of these applications to council.
Thank you, Mr. Holmes. Next, we'll hear from the applicant. Please start with your name and address, and you'll have up to 10 minutes. Go ahead and pull that mic down too, if that helps.
Madam Chair, members, Gary McAllister representing Taffy Downs. There was one concern that the neighbor to the south wrote in about the trees along the irrigation bank. And once that gets piped underground, those trees will die, and we've agreed to remove them. They got to come out. They're cottonwoods, they'll die. So that was one concern we had from one of the neighbors. The rest of the neighbors seem to be very happy with the size and the layouts. And I think Kevin covered it pretty well, and I'll stand for questions.
Excellent. Thank you. Great. Well, before we get to questions, I'll just do a call to see if we have a representative from the Centennial Neighborhood Association here. Alex, hi, I see you online. Are you here to speak on behalf of the Neighborhood Association? Just give us a second.
Madam Chair, I think he's here on behalf of the applicant.
Oh.
Yeah, Madam Chair, there's actually, with the two preliminary plats, there's two applicants, so they
Okay,
can share
got
the
it.
time.
Thank you. Okay, so not with the Neighborhood Association. Great. Okay, so seeing then with the Centennial Neighborhood Association, then we will move to questions from the commission for staff or the applicant.
Madam Chair,
Oh.
can we give Alex some time since he is also an applicant?
Sure, absolutely. Hi, Alex. Please start with your name and address, and you'll have 5 minutes or so, whatever was remaining.
Thank you. Hi, Alex MacDonald, 380 State Street in Eagle, representing Gardner Vines. Can you hear me okay? Just want to double check.
Yes.
Hey, thank you. And real quick comments, Kevin did a great job. I think, this project does represent a best fit for the community. I think overall, it's actually working a lot together through a few revisions to find a best fit between both parties for these projects. So again, we're redeveloping, our proposal is redeveloping around 8 acres to 13 buildable lots. We are keeping the existing home that's already there. That will stay on to around 2.2 acres. And our goal is to keep as much vegetation and trees as we can, as Mr. McAllister said. So we're also, again, to reiterate, requesting rezone into R1B. And we do want to keep that uniformity with the west bench and having those larger lots. And so part of what we hope to do is also have that the landscape buffer within the subdivision. And in turn, our proposal is to require planting one tree, at least one tree, into each buildable lot. And with that, we thank you for your time.
Great. Thank you, Mr. McDonald. Okay, well, with that, then we will move to questions from the commission for staff or the applicant.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Danley.
it's a question for staff. And when I look at our staff report and I see what was provided by ACHD, specifically on the street network, and then I see what's in front of me. So I see the staff report from ACHD shows that Southern Road as a cul-de-sac, recommended private road according to their report. What we're seeing is it's wrapped around as a stub, what could be, if ever redeveloped, a connection that hopefully would get all the way to Cloverdale. So which is it?
Yeah, Madam Chair, Commissioner Danley. So there's been a couple revisions with this, and with that, the initial subdivisions that got sent to ACHD are not what we have before us. So the most up-to-date plans are what you see here. In the ACHD staff report, they do actually recognize the fact that that cul-de-sac is not ideal in their mind, in that they kind of give like, well, if it's going to be a cul-de-sac, it should be private or it should be stubbed. And so in this case, we've kind of moved towards that stub option to retain the ability, like you said, to make that future connection.
So the staff report from ACHD that has a great big blue cul-de-sac on it is no longer valid. And it's now a public stub street that goes off to the east.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Danley, that is correct. That's what the applicants are now proposing. And I think in the interim period before we go to council, we'll obviously run this by ACHD again to make sure that they don't have any additional concerns.
Okay, one last question.
Please, Commissioner Danley.
So this could be to either applicant or staff. My question is Paint Street. Paint Street comes from the existing neighborhood and is a cul-de-sac. My question is, why not pull it all the way to connect to the very street that I was just talking about? Why not provide that internal circulation and connection as opposed to a series of stubs and cul-de-sacs?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Danley, I can kind of give a little bit of background about how this specific plan, because it was the result of working with both parties through multiple iterations. And that was one thing that we discussed. There is an existing house that you see there on this property, which is the property owners, and they were not necessarily in favor of pulling that street through. Originally, we also wanted to maybe do a micropath connection there as well, but it seemed that the one micropath connection in the north-south there that you can see in green would probably suffice for the neighborhood. Really, the distance between Paint Street over here and the ability to get up to Goldenrod, which is a collector roadway, which generally we like to funnel traffic to, and the amount of traffic that really could be
on these streets is pretty minimal, that it seemed like just having the micropath connection would be sufficient in this case.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Blanchard.
I didn't hear either of the applicants address the sidewalk issue. What is our stance on the sidewalks now?
Madam Chair, members, the request was to have detached sidewalks and then a planting space in front of them was set back 15 feet, and then you have 2 feet additional, right? Ends up you have 17 feet, your sidewalk almost sits in your front porch. Okay, so our compromise was, because we like the trees in the subdivision too, is to have attached sidewalks and then require each home builder to put a tree in probably every 30 feet, okay, along the 8 feet back of that, so that you have a nice line of trees in the sub. The area has a lot of trees in it anyways, and so that's our alternate, to get the trees that we'd like to have, but not have your sidewalk sit on your front door. So
Thank you, Mr. McAllister.
and if I can speak to the issue about the Paint Street coming through, we had some objections from the neighbors. If we turned it, went north and then connected their yard, they then have a street in their front yard and a street in their backyard. They were not very happy with that scenario. So
Thank
that was
you.
the other reason too.
Great.
All right, thank you.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Squires.
Mr. Holmes, remind me of the setbacks for the front, and how much would this detached sidewalk infringe into the lot? These are they're sizable lots. So I'm having a hard time seeing the struggle to be able to get the detached sidewalk in along with the trees. But if you can help enlighten me, I'd appreciate it.
Sure, Madam Chair, Commissioner Squires. So in the R1B zone, it's your typical front setbacks of 15 feet to living space and 20 to front loaded garages, which from the planning team's perspective does provide enough room to detach sidewalks and get those street trees as well.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Danley.
just to clarify, correct me if I'm wrong here, but in this case, the landscape strip, it can go down to 6 feet, because if you put street trees in with root barrier, it can go all the way to 6 feet. But I think our default is 8, is that right?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Danley, 8 feet. Yes, 8 feet is right when you're not doing root barriers.
Right.
I think it's kind of ACHD standard is.
So the difference really between the two is the 8 feet. As much as I can understand, or it could be 6 if willing to go to a root barrier, which is certainly an effective treatment as well. Okay, thank you.
Okay, seeing no further questions, then we'll move to public testimony. So do we have anybody in-house here that would like to speak on this item? I do have one. Oh, that was Mr. McAllister. Is there anybody else online that would like to speak on this item? Please virtually raise your hand. Great, let's start with Marcine Taylor, and then Brian, and then Michael. We'll just go down the list there. Just give us a moment while we switch you over to speaking permissions. Okay, Ms. Taylor, please unmute when you're ready. Start with your name and address. You can turn your camera on if you'd like to, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Thank you. My name is Marcine Taylor. I'm at 12453 West Briarwood Drive. While the plat map and everything appears fine, I'm most concerned with the zone change at all. There are very few pockets of this A1 zone that actually still have houses on them. And I happen to live in one of those areas that's a dead-end street with 18 1-acre lots that are zoned A1. And the precedent that this has already been set on that street you see the erosion where lot by lot, those are changed. And then you no longer have the nice community street and that feel of how this neighborhood always, has been historically for over 50 years, where then you start getting berms and fences along the street instead of people's front yards. And I think it really hurts the communities. And there are so few of these left that I hate to see them eroded. And I am vehemently opposed. And if this were on my street, if one of my neighbors ever wants to redevelop, I will absolutely fight against it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Taylor. Next, we'll hear from Mr. Martindale. Please go ahead and unmute and start with your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Good evening, Brian Martindale, 4154 North Muldoon. And I think I'm the only property that the existing property that touches both of these proposed neighborhoods. So the only point I wanted to mention, very brief, there are some trees, some large cottonwood and some other existing trees, many of which are dying. And I do hope as a condition of moving forward with the proposed development that the developers will remove all of the existing trees. And I don't know if we need a height requirement, trees above X feet, but they are quite a nuisance. They've caused a fair amount of damage already. I can personally attest to that. But more important, I just think that they're a significant risk. So these are trees, giant cottonwoods along the south and the western borders of those proposed developments. So I do hope that those can be removed as a condition of moving forward.
Thank you, Mr. Martindale. Great. Next, we'll hear from Michael Hurd. Please go ahead and unmute when you're ready. Start with your name and address, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Not working. Yes, my name is Michael Hurd. I live at 12303 West Goldenrod Avenue. I'm in the, so if you turn west off of Cloverdale on Goldenrod, the first lot is a Montessori preschool, and the second lot is my lot, my house, and then the proposed development would start immediately to the west of that. I just have a couple of concerns I would like to address. First of all, the road that goes down the property off of Goldenrod on the west side of my property, we spoke to planning and zoning, and they indicated that one option was to have 5 feet of common area, then the sidewalk, and then the road. And we would like that because we have mature grapevines on our on that border of our property and mature lilacs. And we're worried about if development goes in right on the property line that we'll lose our mature grapevines and those mature lilacs. So we endorse that option. Second of all, the lot to the south of our property currently has the head gate for irrigation approximately midway on the south boundary. Every Thursday for 4 hours, I have to access that head gate to divert the water to my lot to be able to flood. I get the water only for 4 hours a week. I need it to flood. I have an established orchard and established huge walnut trees that have been flooded for years. I need to continue that. In the past, I've had access just walking across that proposed lot site to get to the head gate. I need to know how they're going to address access to me to the head gate so that I make sure that I can continue to flood irrigate my orchard. Those are my 2 concerns.
Thank you, Mr. Hurd. Do we have anybody else that would like to speak on this item, either in person or online? If you're online, please virtually raise your hand. Okay, seeing none, then we'll move to rebuttal by the applicant. So you'll have 5 minutes, whether Mr. McAllister or Mr. McDonald would like to take that. Either one is fine. Please start again just with your name. So clear.
Gary McAllister, 2115 East Bowstring Street. Not a concern. We will remove those trees They're, once that water gone, they'll all die. We'll remove those, take them out. They are a nuisance once that water's gone. Thank you.
Okay. Mr. McDonald, you want to go ahead and take the rest of that time?
Yes, thank you, Madam Chair, members of the commission. So addressing a couple of the issues there. Yeah, as Mr. McAllister said, that I do believe that part of our conditions of approval to do a tree mitigation study, which will help assess not only the health of trees, but what to keep, what could get removed. And so, yeah, our understanding is as we go through the process of development, those trees will be removed as the irrigation pipe gets piped underneath. And so then, yeah, with any other concerns with, vegetation, our goal is to keep as much as we can through this process. And that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. With that, we'll close the public portion of the hearing, and the item is now before the commission.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Danley.
I move that we recommend CAR 21-18, SUB 21-21, and SUB 21-42. I recommend we recommend approval to City Council with the terms and conditions found in the staff report.
Okay, great. We have a motion on the table to recommend approval for item number 3. Do we have a second?
Second.
Second.
Great. I heard a second first from Commissioner Squires. Is there a discussion?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Danley.
There's a few things I'm going to bring up in support of the motion and also some concerns. With respect to the rezone, and what we heard from one of the folks testifying, I understand that, and it's a pain and a growing pain that I know not everybody is fond of. Unfortunately, the conversion of some of the single lot units that are out there, especially some of the smaller parcels like this is part of urbanization. This is part of, in my mind, the natural progression of growth. And so I don't see a real significant reason why to deny the rezone. As for the sub applications, my biggest pause is the street connectivity, specifically on the what the name of the street that goes Paint. In the bigger picture, that street's trying to go to the west. It's also stubbed in the next parcel over, and I suspect that might come up again when you come in front of council. Given that these are local streets and given the proximity to Goldenrod, it's something I can accept, but sort of begrudgingly, honestly. But I think there's enough here and that it complies enough with our zoning ordinance that we ought to recommend approval.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Squires.
Commissioner Danley hit a lot of my high points, especially the design. That was an initial concern of mine as well. But again, I understand the reasons why. I don't like it though, but I understand. I think we need to stick with the attached sidewalks. I think there's plenty of room to make all of this work, and I fully support staff in their condition on that. The one thing I didn't hear in the rebuttal, and I do have a concern with, I know access to water is really important, and I just want to make sure that the gentleman who spoke, Mr. Hurd, does have access to his flood irrigation each week. And so I was trying to skim through the conditions of approval to see if there was any sort of anything that alluded to that. I'm not seeing it offhand, but I do want to make sure that we take care of him. So anyway, I think that's all I have for right now. Thank you.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Danley.
Point of order for Commissioner Squires. You said attached sidewalk. Did you mean detached sidewalk?
Yes, I'm so sorry. Yes, I did. I did say that.
Great.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Blanchard.
Thank you. I want to commend Commissioner Danley, who's been on point on both of these so far as usual. Just to bring up two quick things, I do commiserate a bit with Ms. Taylor, who spoke about fences and berms along streets, and I definitely empathize on that one. I think it's not great design. I think all of us have a little bit of pain seeing that up on the north end of the project there. And then I will also direct the rest of the commissioners. It looks like, if I'm reading this correctly, on page 263, we have a letter from the Lateral Association, which it looks like is advocating for the water to be retained for those orchards and grapes that the one landowner has. So I think council should be able to sort that out when they get this.
Thank you, Commissioner Blanchard. Okay, seeing no further discussion, we have a motion on the table to recommend approval for CAR 21-18, SUB 21-21, and SUB 21-42. Will the clerk please call the vote?
Stead,
Aye.
Squires,
Aye.
Blanchard,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
Danley.
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries.
Can we take a quick 5?
Yeah, we're gonna go ahead and just take a 5-minute break and we'll pick it up again just after 7 o'clock.
guess that's stylish. Confirmed. What's that? Where are those folks gathered up? Who's that? Are they on an item 10?
Are those folks new? That's quite the team.
Okay, we're going to start up again here with item number 4. This is PUD 21-45 for Glancey, Rockwell and Associates at 4420 North 5 Mile Road. This is a modification to previously approved planned residential development to add 5 single-family dwellings. Please go ahead, Ms. Rain.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Members of the commission. This item before you is a modification to a previously approved planned residential development to add 5 dwellings to an existing senior housing facility on 16.34 acres in an R1C single-family residential zone. The project lies within the McMillan and 5 Mile Neighborhood Activity Center. The use was originally approved through a CUP in 2006. The site is surrounded on all sides by residential uses of various sizes. The Settlers Canal runs diagonal through the site from near the southwest corner up and along the northern property edge. An existing church and retreat center occupies the east side of the parcel, and the proposal meets all dimensional requirements of the zone. We're hearing this item tonight because the applicant is in opposition to condition 3. A proposed pathway segment runs through the property adjacent to the Settlers Canal as identified in the City of Boise Pathways Plan. This section is a critical link to connecting this neighborhood activity center and Southwest neighborhoods to Hyatt Hidden Lakes Reserve and the future Goddard Linear Park. Typically, the planning team would require the applicant to install a 12-foot wide concrete path for public use. However, at this time, a condition of approval will only require a 12-foot wide blanket public access easement adjacent to the south side of the canal, which could accommodate a future pathway. In conclusion, the proposed development is in compliance with the comprehensive plan. With the recommended conditions of approval, the planning team finds the request to be consistent with the standards for approval and recommends approval of the application with conditions. Thank you, and I'll be happy to answer any questions you may have. And Deanna Dupuy, the lead planner for the Pathways Plan, is also available on Zoom if you have any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Rain. Great. Next, we'll move to hear from the applicant, Mr. Rockwell. Please start with your name and address, and you'll have up to 10 minutes.
Okay, great. Madam Chair and members of this commission, my name is Christian Welp, and my address is 11778 West Tioga Street, Boise. And as mentioned, number 3 on the recommended conditions of approval is the only concern that we have. And there's a couple reasons for that. The first concern is that I spoke with Mac Myers he's the district manager of Settlers Irrigation. And he said that he has also spoken, and I don't know if it was to Crystal or if it was with Mrs. Dupuy, but that an easement is not possible and they don't plan on giving one to the city for the walking path. Walking paths are great. The one that comes to my mind, of course, is the green belt, which I use along with my kids. But this one is a little bit different in scope. So if the irrigation district manager is not willing to give an easement, and they have the present easement where this walking path would be located, it seems difficult for us to be able to give that permission if they're not able to give permission. Legally, I don't know how easements work. I don't know if the city has to get permission from the Settlers District Irrigation, or if you can have an easement on top of an easement. I don't know if that is possible. If that's not possible, the irrigation district has either 60 foot or 75 foot, is it Crystal? Foot wide easement from the middle of the canal. If you can't have an easement on top of an easement, then you have to have a 12-foot wide well, probably more than 12-foot wide easement. If the walking path is 12-foot wide outside of what their easement is, and that is getting very wide, and I think would go into buildings that we have on the property. So the other concern is nothing seems to be specific with the plan as far as I understand in talking with Crystal, where this walkway is going to be, which side of the canal it's going to be on, and when it's going to be built, and how it's going to be built. So without knowing any of those specifics and without permission from the irrigation district, it doesn't seem to be to us to be something that is necessary for us to complete our building project. And with that, do I stand for questions, or I'm sorry, this is my first time.
It would be nice. Yeah.
Okay.
We are first going to ask for a representative from the neighborhood association, and then we'll do questions for
Okay.
you from our commission.
So should I go sit down?
You can sit down, but don't go too far.
Okay, perfect.
Just like right there would be fine. Okay. So before we get to questions, I'll just check to see if we have a West Valley Neighborhood Association representative with us tonight. Okay, seeing none, then we will move to questions from the commission for staff of the applicant. And I will just read into the record the site-specific condition of approval that is under discussion here is number 3, which is a 12-foot pedestrian pathway easement shall be established adjacent to the canal on the south side prior to submittal of the building permits. So do we have any questions from the commission?
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Moore.
So I probably have the same question. I think the applicant brought up most of the questions that I have. So, and I'll start with the first one. Is this pathway easement meant to be inside the irrigation easement, or is it meant to be adjacent to it? And that's a question for staff or the pathways representative.
Sure, I can take this one. Madam Chair, Commissioner Moore, the condition was intentionally written vague so that we could work through with Settlers Irrigation to see what's the best fit for this property. We did specify the south side because there is more room on that side, but that could be either within the Settlers Irrigation easement or on the outside of it.
Madam Chair.
Yes, go ahead. And I see that Deanna has asked to be moved to a presenter. So we'll work on that. And go ahead, please, Commissioner Moore.
And just to clarify, by the south side, looking at the plan on our packet page, sorry, 276, that would, I guess, technically be sort of the east side of that canal, just in relation to our site plan.
Madam Chair, Commissioner Moore, yes, it's like southeast kind of curves.
Okay, that's all I have for now. Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Blanchard.
Question for staff. Crystal, page 302 in our packet is the letter from David Duval from Nampa and Meridian Irrigation District. Is there, he references Mr. Myers and the Settlers Irrigation District in that letter. Is there a reason that he wouldn't have forwarded this on to Settlers Irrigation District or to legal counsel at Elam and Burke on this one if they had concerns?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Blanchard, I'm not quite sure how to answer that question of notification, excuse me, but I didn't receive any official comment from Settlers Canal. I'm sorry, I can't. Maybe rephrase?
No, that's just a lot of times when it comes to dealing with irrigation districts, we get some kind of a letter in the packet from legal counsel at Elam and Burke on these kind of things. It just seems to me that like if there was a big concern from Nampa and Meridian Irrigation District, I'm assuming they would have sent it to Settlers and legal counsel, but we don't have anything from either one of them.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Squires.
So Ms. Rain, as pathways are typically planned well in advance, through master planning, a comprehensive plan, master pathways plans, I have to assume that there's been some level of communication with settlers throughout the years regarding the intention of putting a pathway along their canal. Can you speak to that and what conversations you've had specifically related to this application?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Squires, I would defer to Ms. Dupuy on this one, if I could.
Madam Chair, Commissioner, we have been working with settlers as part of our Pathways Master Plan process. And I believe I presented to Commission at work session earlier in the summer about our progress to date on that plan. As this is the first comprehensive pathway plan that we've done since really the master planning for the Greenbelt, this is kind of our first comprehensive conversation with those irrigation districts about pathways generally. I have spoken with Mac in the specific of this site and then also about pathways generally along Settlers Canal. Generally, Settlers Irrigation has worked well on other projects, and that we're just really trying to continue to build this relationship with them to identify their needs and how we can find win-win situations so that they can continue their business, but that we can also secure space for pathway users. So we're still in conversations, and that's really why we're open to the conversation of an easement without, for us to kind of become a little bit clearer on settlers' specific needs for their easement.
Madam Chair, follow up.
Please, Commissioner Squires.
Thank you for that. What are the alternatives if you can't come to some sort of agreement with settlers? Obviously, you're putting the applicant in a tough situation. What is Plan B if we can't get there?
I think there's a couple, Madam Chair, Commissioner, the Plan B would be to do outside of the irrigation easement. And that is something that we've seen other cities in the Treasure Valley do. If it cannot fit within the irrigation easement, it's private development. They make space to accommodate that as, it meets the goals of the comprehensive plan and our city. And we have that ability through private development. The other one would be that we miss this critical link. As Ms. Rains had said, this is a connection from our in progress Goddard Linear Park. We already have existing multi-use path south of Hyatt Hidden Lakes Reserve, and this would be another piece of the puzzle to get to our connection.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Moore.
So I'm looking at the development kind of I guess to the east. There's Marcliffe Way, if I'm looking on path at page 272. And then there's some kind of houses right there. Is there a pathway easement? How does that easement work kind of with those houses? I would anticipate that those probably wouldn't redevelop anytime soon.
Correct. Madam Chair, Commissioner, correct. We would need to continue to have these conversations with Settlers Irrigation to see if there's opportunity to be within their irrigation easement there because of likely those houses are unlikely to redevelop. And there is precedence for other irrigation districts where if there are service roads on both sides of the waterway, that they are more accommodating with other irrigation districts to have a pathway on one side if they can continue to service their waterway on the other side of the canal. So we see opportunity, but again, we want to maintain, we need to work with our relationship managers and relationship partners with settlers to have this full connection. Madam Chair, Commissioners, and one of the critical pieces is private property. So we can't just do it with the irrigation district because at the end of the day, especially in this case, it is a private property owner. And so through getting the easement through development is our best instead of having to approach the private property owner later. At this time, this is our opportunity to secure that easement.
Okay, I see Commissioner Moore unmuting. So before I move on, I'll just check one more time. Do we have any further questions?
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Moore.
just a quick follow-up. So just to confirm, essentially, what you're saying is if the Settlers Canal does not allow a pathway inside their easement, then this pathway would, if an easement outside of the canal was granted for this property, would essentially end those houses off of Markliff Way, unless they redeveloped years down the road.
Madam Commissioner, or Madam Chair, Commissioners, in the short run, yes, that could be a solution, that the path, and again, we're asking for an easement, not a built pathway. So we may hold that easement and never use it until perhaps something changes. Our direction of writing the the master pathway plan is to really be a visionary plan, thinking 50 years in the future. Our irrigation districts may look different 50 years from now. Private property may look different. So we're trying to seek these opportunities, hold these easements as we can, but we may not exercise it or use it for, the immediate to long term, but to have that opportunity now to act in what we believe is the best interest for the city will help us.
Thank you.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Blanchard.
a quick question. Crystal, or just refresh my memory on this one. We're making a recommendation on this one, correct?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Blanchard, you're approving or denying.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, seeing no further questions, then we'll move to public testimony. Do we have anybody who would like to testify on this item, either online or in person? All right, seeing none, then we'd move back to the applicant for a 5-minute rebuttal if you'd like to use that time. There hasn't been any other opposition, but you're welcome to use the time to add any last comments.
Yes, Madam Chair, members of this commission, thank you again.
Sorry, can you just mention your name again? For the record?
Sorry, Christian Welp.
Perfect.
And I represent the builder. Pete Rockwell is our architect, and I work for the Catholic Diocese of Boise. It's my understanding, and maybe, is it Mrs. Dupuy? Or Crystal can address this. What Mac Myers told me is that there's no way that they're going to give an easement to the city. But maybe something has developed in the past 10 days. I don't know. But if he is that, if he is that concerned, or if he is that direct about his intention, how long would we have to wait before we can put an addition on to the buildings that we have for our retired priests in the Diocese of Boise, which is all the state of Idaho? It doesn't seem like a conclusion is anytime forthcoming. So I would ask that you approve our building plan that falls with, that fits within every other requirement that you have, without being required to provide an easement for the walkway through the property. Do I stand for questions?
Thank you. No, at this point,
Okay.
You're finished, you're finished.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, with that, we'll close the public portion of the hearing, and the item is now before the commission.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Moore.
I move that we approve PUD 21-45 with all the terms and conditions in the staff report.
Second.
I heard a second first from Commissioner Danley. Commissioner Moore, would you like to kick off the discussion?
Absolutely. So the pathway easement, while vague, I think for this particular site plan, it doesn't affect what you can do with that expansion on the units, because it is on the other side of that lateral of the canal. If you were developing kind of that other portion, it might affect what you can do. But at this point, I don't think it affects your site plan at all. And having it there, whether it's utilized now or later, or whether it's utilized at all under the current plan that we're looking at, it doesn't really affect or restrict anything at all. So I'm comfortable keeping the easement. It's a little bit confusing to not have the two talking to each other. I think that does add some confusion to applicants and to commission questions. But I understand that there's a lot of pathways and it just hasn't been sorted at this point. So with that, I'll support this application.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Danley and then Commissioner Squires.
I was actually going to say I will defer my time to Commissioner Squires because I know she's trying to get in, so I'll let her.
Okay, we'll start with Commissioner Squires and then go to Commissioner Danley.
I really don't know that anyone really wants to hear from me, but
we do, promise.
I second the motion. I think there would have been a stronger case from the applicant had he had brought a letter from settlers stating to the effect that this was not going to be allowed. Right now, it's just hearsay. And at this point, I have a letter in our packet from Nampa Meridian Irrigation District that doesn't address really much of anything. So at this time, I think we let the conditions stand. If we find ourselves in a pickle a little bit later on, then the applicant always has the ability to come back to this commission, I believe, and please correct me if I'm wrong, but to come back and ask for a modification of their PUD approval. So I will be supporting the motion. Thank you.
Commissioner Danley.
Yeah. Okay, quickly, this is a process that I'm very familiar with. It's what we kind of do. And so this takes time. These things take time. This master plan is going to take, frankly, generations before it's fully developed out. People change positions. The irrigation companies change their opinions, and we've seen this all over this valley. The city of Meridian has been actually incredibly successful with getting pathways built on their irrigation system, much more than we have. And frankly, we're learning lessons from them and now applying them. It is this type of a plan, it is this type of an effort, and is this type of easement that allows this plan to ultimately mature and develop into something pretty significant and special, just like it has and we've seen in other places throughout this county and the valley. So I don't see a reason why we shouldn't have the easement. You can go forth and build what you need to build. This easement will exist, and hopefully the details will get worked out and an agreement will be made. And ultimately this section of the plan, which is pretty key for this part of the area, will ultimately get built. And so for those reasons, I'm supportive of the motion.
Okay, we have a motion on the table to approve item number 4. This is PUD 21-45 at 4420 North 5 Mile Road. With all the terms and conditions as outlined in the staff report. Will the clerk please call the vote?
Ben,
Aye.
Squires,
Aye.
Blanchard,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
Danley.
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to item number 6. This is SOS 21-23 for H Engineering at 8410 West Vincent Street. This is a waiver to the subdivision ordinance requirement to construct curb, gutter, and sidewalk. And we'll start, please, with Ms. Rain.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, can you see my presentation?
Yes.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you. This item before you is a waiver to the subdivision ordinance requirement to construct curb, gutter, and sidewalk as a part of a minor land division on 0.48 acres located in a pending R1B DA single-family residential with development agreement zone. The right-of-way, that was that one. The right-of-way adjacent to the subject parcel to the north is improved with vertical curb, gutter, and attached sidewalks that connects into an extensive pedestrian system along a stretch of the Overland Road commercial corridor. Curb, gutter, and attached sidewalk exist on the same side of Vincent, approximately 515 feet to the west of the subject parcel, 330 feet east, and future improvements are expected 275 feet to the south. The development code states that all new parcels that abut the public right-of-way shall be improved with sidewalk, curb, and gutter. However, the development code does allow for a waiver to these requirements so the applicant may develop the property in a reasonable manner, provided the quality is not diminished. The applicant cites the presence of an open lateral, trees, utility poles, and the financial impact to relocate them as barriers to installing the required improvements. While these conditions do exist, they're not unique to the property. Discussion with community forestry indicate the existing trees and shrubs are not desirable, and conversations with impacted agencies indicate that the installation of the improvements are possible. Granting of the waiver could set a negative precedent in this rapidly developing area, resulting in a substantial loss of pedestrian infrastructure opportunities near a commercial principal arterial, as well as current and future connectivity of this growing neighborhood. In conclusion, the planning team recommends denial of the waiver to install curb, gutter, and sidewalk, and the commission makes a final decision.
Thank you, Ms. Ryan. Next, we'll hear from the applicant. Please start with your name and address, Mr. Kachik, for the record, and you'll have up to 10 minutes. Yes, we're ready for you. Just go ahead and unmute when you're ready. You're welcome to turn your camera on too.
Oh, sorry about that.
Let's share our screen actually.
Okay, my name is Ivar Kadich. My wife Jao Win is here. So do we just share screen? We kind of put together a little PowerPoint, certainly not as professional as the ones you've seen today, but
great. Yeah. You should be able to do that now.
Okay. And okay, my wife's gonna start us off with this. So hopefully,
please start again when she takes the mic. If she can please state her name and address for the record.
Hi, my name is Chao Wing. This is my husband. We're trying to purchase 0.48 acres of land from Debbie Lasher that will be, sorry, I'm just trying to make it so I can see. That will split off from a 0.91 acre lot so that we can build our home for our growing family and take care of our mom. To be able to purchase this land from Debbie Lasher, which is located on the 8410 West Vincent in Boise, Idaho 83709. We were told that we had to rezone this lot and complete a minor land division. We have completed pretty much all the requirements except for the sidewalk, curb, and gutter. Unfortunately, putting in sidewalk, curb, and gutter is a massive and expensive undertaking for our family to endure, and we're here to plead our case for the subdivision ordinance. According to code 11-09-05, whenever a tract be subdivided or altered by a record survey as unusual size or shape or has unusual conditions such that the strict application of these regulations would result in substantial hardship or inequity, the council may waive or modify such regulations so that the property may be developed in reasonable manner. The three reasons why we're asking for this subdivision ordinance waiver request is it will cause us hardship. It's going to cause inequity and then diminishes the quality and characteristic of the property. So the first hardship is in order for us to add the sidewalk, curb, and gutter, it would require us to move a power line. So from Josh, who works at Idaho Power and is a distribution designer, he says, in regards to your inquiry on if we would prefer to leave the pole as is or move it to a different location, I would have to answer we would prefer to leave the pole as is. The pole does serve commercial business, and modifying the primary feeds would be a lengthy outage and would require after-hour works. And according to Dr. Guadalupe Gortez at Aspen Dental, we quote him, intermittent power outages would impact at least 240 patients and $60,000 of revenue a week. The intermittent power outages would prohibit us from operating properly.
And this is Ivar Kadich at 2118 Overland Road, Boise, Idaho 83705. Madam Chairman, I think I'm supposed to say. I did want to mention real quick that Aspen Dental Office did support our waiver. However, it's going through the legal department all the way in New York City right now. And that process is long and we've been waiting for a couple of weeks, but it still wasn't done in time for today. So sorry about that. We're trying to get the concrete evidence there.
So here are the pictures of the power line and how they interlink with each other, and removing of that would cause those power outages. Hardship number 2 is in order to add the sidewalk, curb, and gutter, we need to remove the trees in the east and south side of this property. This includes 4 large old trees and 30 plus other trees of various size. This process does go against the city's Boise's plan to increase our tree canopy. Here are some images of the trees. And I know that Crystal had mentioned that, they thought that these trees were nuisances, but we actually really enjoyed and loved this landscape, which is the reason why we wanted this property. So there's some massive trees, and then here's some additional pictures of the medium-sized trees. Here's just a quick clip of the goal of the City of Tree Challenge, just stating that they're trying to increase the canopy and add additional trees to the city. Hardship number 3, to accommodate the sidewalk, curb and gutter would also have to be removing the irrigation ditch that runs the entire length of our property. This process would also include the relocation of a massive concrete irrigation box and the removal of the irrigation head wall. So here is one of the pictures of the irrigation, and it's also being utilized by ducks and other animals.
Yeah, this is Sidewalk Cottage, 2118 Overland Road. Again, my wife is not feeling too well. We actually wanted to be in this presentation in person, but my parents, Nancy and William Cottage, came down with COVID late last week, and we happened to have dinner with them, so we're in quarantine right now. But we did want to be there. We're taking it very serious, and my wife's unfortunately not feeling too well. But as you can see in the picture, there are ducks. There's at least a dozen ducks that nest there. They use the trees for refuge. So I mean, we actually talked to the forest department as well, the city urban one. They came out and inspected it. They said the trees were all amazing. I don't know what Crystal got a report, but I'm sure it's super good. Next, we're going to go into the inequity portion of this. And this is just from Ronald Hodge, our survey department manager at Foxline Surveys. Yes, the CGs do improve the value, but only for 163 feet. He would still have to do another 274 feet. That will not improve his value. The estimate is $75,100 for improvements, not including land. A bank does not like to loan money against something that does not improve the value of our home. Conceptually, we agree with the policy. However, we're holding individuals to the same standard as a developer. Developer will have multiple lots spread the cost to spread the cost and the ability to recover. In this case, it's just a couple trying to build a home, raise their kids in the town they grew up in. We wonder why housing is 80% overvalued right now. This does not help things. I'm trying to talk really fast because I didn't realize there's such a quick time frame, but here's a little plat thing. You can see this is a really wiggly line, but I tried to highlight as straight as I could of our property. And the other part that doesn't help us at all, the mass majority of it, is all the way over here. And I think Crystal's presentation failed to mention that this runs into a dead end as well. So over there. Inequity 2, frontal improvement requirements is based on the assumption of significant increase in development in our neighborhood. The neighborhood is not like other neighborhoods. We are composed mostly of loop arounds and dead end streets with no quick access to main streets. The traffic is slim to none in our neighborhood, and the need for such an expensive undertaking doesn't make sense. We don't even have a school or park in our area, and actually with our flight zone impact, we can never have a fluid. I'm gonna get to that right now. Just wanted to highlight airport influence area B1, new residence development is limited to 3 units per acre, and no new schools are allowed, new residents. Anyways, you can read that for yourselves. But I know Crystal's calculations, so 4 homes or something like that. Ours, it's being in the flight impact area, it's actually only 3 per acre. So hopefully it's not as massive of a increase as it showed up there. And then there's more on the flight impact zone. Based on the B1A influence zone, you can only develop 3 homes per acre. Debbie Lasher's is 0.91 acres. We would be able to develop 2.73. So if this waiver is approved, then we can move forward with building our home. And I don't think there'll ever be a 0.73 home built there. But we'd pretty much be at max capacity there. Our neighborhood is comprised of similar lots with limitations on development for the exact same reasons. Yes, there is a new neighborhood going up the street. It is a 3.2 acre lot zone C1, which is an even higher density zoning, but with the restrictions of flight impact, they were only able to build 9 homes on there. And this is by far the largest parcel in our neighborhood, which is now gone. So I don't see future development taking off too much there. Interest does not always mean follow through. This message was resonated by Scott Pierce, construction supervisor operations at Suez Water. He said that many people have called an interest in connecting to city water, but once they find out the price, nothing comes of it. City water connections is one of the requirements of the minor land division. Currently, only our lot and the new subdivision has connection to the city water. Even if the water runs across the front of their property, they'd have to pay half the cost of the water extension, which is still in a 5-figure number. To give you an idea of this cost, extending city water across 200 feet cost us $35,000. This does not include any of the other additional costs or improvements of the minor land division. That's just that one alone. This is a quick example of an improvement of a waiver that was denied and then approved later.
No, the planner had.
Oh, the planner had recommended it being denied, but it was approved.
They only had to move an irrigation.
Yeah, and they only had to move an irrigation at a much smaller distance. And as you can see, where this house sits right here, there's a new neighborhood, these Ormond Street cottages. The sidewalk went right up to their land. They only have about 100 feet to do, much smaller than what we're doing, and it still got approved. So at some instances, the city does take that into consideration. As far as diminishing the quality and characteristics of our neighborhood streets are primarily lined with very old and large trees. Additionally, a large percentage of our neighborhood is comprised of horse owners and small farm type animals. The trees and animals are special characteristics we all hold dear. We have a small countryside feel that we'd like to protect. So looking down the road, any direction you go in our neighborhood, every street is lined with these trees that Crystal mentioned were undesirable, but we certainly love them. And we'd actually be removing quite a small ecosystem if these were all one-day sidewalks instead of trees. And should I talk about this?
Just go ahead.
Oh yeah, you can see right here, this is the adjacent corner to us. Crystal showed this as well. There's no sidewalks there as well. My wife wants me to skip that one. So in conclusion, at pretty much every level in our research process, every company and person agrees that the work is not needed and agree their companies would prefer to see the waiver approved. From Idaho Power to Fox Survey Group, surrounding businesses, ourselves and our neighbors, ACHD is not requiring it as well. The only step in the process that deems this necessary is planning and development services based on assumptions of massive growth. And I just threw in a little snippet down there from the ACHD document where they don't require the frontal improvements for this development application as well.
Okay, that's it.
And my time's over. I'm sorry. I'm done. I went as fast as I could. Thank you.
You did great. Thank you. Okay, so next I would ask to see if we have a representative from the South Cole Neighborhood Association to speak on this item. Seeing none, then we'll move on to questions from the commission for staff or the applicant.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Danley.
Crystal, so the concept of a meandering sidewalk is not something I think we've been talking about at all. We're pretty much assuming an attached 5-foot standard right on the edge of pavement kind of a sidewalk, whereas especially on the utility poles, there's no reason on the earth we can't meander around that. That's exactly the purpose of it. There are also seemingly some of the trees that might also be kind of in that general line of path. So why is it seemingly that we can't go with any sort of a alternating meander, a slight meander within reason, by the way, and an attached sidewalk? What am I missing there?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Danley, that is a possibility. There's plenty of space on this property and within the right of way to move around those. Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, so there's room to solve some of the problems by meandering some of the sidewalk. Is that the conclusion from staff?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Danley, correct.
Perfect, thank you.
Okay, do we have any further questions from the commission? Okay, seeing none, at this point then we would move to public testimony. I don't think we have anybody present for that, but if you are online and would like to testify on this item, please virtually raise your hand. Okay, seeing none, then this would be the opportunity for the applicant to give a 5-minute rebuttal. Mr. Katich, you are welcome to use that time, but we haven't had opposition, so you're also welcome to waive that time.
I just wanted to put one more thing in. I'll waive the rest of it after I say it, but I know that presentation was long-winded and sorry about that. But for our family personally, we've invested the bulk of our savings into this water extension and site plans and whatnot already. So I feel like it works for in the best interest of the city and for us if it was waived so we can actually build the home, maybe generate some more tax dollars for the city. And I don't know, that's all I've got really. So thank you. I'll waive the rest of the time, but thank you, everybody.
Thank you, Mr. Kadich. Okay, so with that, we'll close the public portion of the hearing and the item is now before the commission.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Danley.
I move that application item SOS 21-23 be denied for the reasons and purposes or reasons in the staff report. I got that right.
Was that a second from Commissioner Moore?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, great. Second from Commissioner Moore. Is there discussion?
Sure, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Danley.
First of all, to the applicant, certainly don't hang your head on your job presenting this evening. I thought you did a great job. I thought you did a really excellent job of collecting all kinds of really good and relevant information. And in fact, I think I'll speak for myself. I agree with a bit of what you said, which is precisely the point of why a meandering sidewalk at times works perfectly. And that is to avoid the very things that were discussed and that you raised, which is in one case, the power poles. They don't need to be moved. You just move the sidewalk around them. In certain cases, that's okay. I also highly agree that many of those trees can very likely be kept, maybe not all of them, but hopefully a good portion of them by working that sidewalk in a way that meanders around them, keeps the root into good tact and keeps them flourishing. Let me make one more point. 76 is the number of lane miles that ACHD currently has in sidewalk gaps throughout Ada County that they are tasked with filling. Every single time that we as a city of Boise add to that by going forth and approving a waiver to our own code just makes that burden greater and longer. And unfortunately, with this application, I totally understand it. It's usually a size of this property of this size is typically subdivided and has, many more units that are being proposed as opposed to this one, which is one. So it's a bit of a rock and a hard place. But this particular parcel goes to an incredibly important arterial, and it gets us internal of that street system. And so therefore, it is a very vital piece in the walkability network that we're trying to build through all of the different land uses and the transportation system in it. So for those reasons, I'm going to stick with the recommendation to deny.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Moore.
I'll be supporting the motion. And yeah, I mean, I totally understand the applicant's position. For one house, like Commissioner Danley stated, I mean, this size lot, we might imagine more houses on a lot this size. But as it stands, I mean, I think we've said it previously, and this is an opportunity to provide connectivity that may not happen in years, and using adjacent properties as a reason not to provide that connectivity will just continue to keep sidewalks out of those neighborhoods where we want them. It sets an unfortunate precedent. In terms of the waiver that was denied, or the waiver that was approved previously, each of these waivers is such a specific situation that you review that basing it off of another waiver is just so difficult because those conditions were very different, likely, and in a different location with different kind of factors. And then in terms of moving the power lines resulting in business outages, Idaho Power is familiar with this process. I imagine that they do this very often. And so losing power for something like this is something that I wouldn't consider necessarily a unique factor to this property, and something that Idaho Power couldn't factor in their process as well. So with all those, I'll be supporting the motion.
The only last thing that I wanted to add, I agree with my commissioners, but we also unfortunately cannot consider personal financial state of the applicant. Landowners come and go, and as Commissioner Moore stated, we are doing our best to build a better Boise for many generations to come beyond current owners. So we have to make decisions with that in mind. So with that, we have a motion to deny item number 6, SOS 21-23 for HMH Engineering at 8410 West Vincent Street. Will the clerk please call the vote?
Dead.
Aye.
Squires.
Aye.
Blanchard.
Aye.
Moore.
Aye.
Stanley.
Aye.
All in favor, motion carries.
Thank you, Mr. Kadich. And it was a very nice presentation. You did great. Okay, so moving on to our last item. This is item number 9 for CAR 21-27 for Babcock Design at 818 West Ann Morrison Park Drive, a rezone of 1.16 acres. Also CUP 21-48 for a conditional use permit for a height exception associated with the proposed multifamily building. And we'll start with staff. Please go ahead when you're ready, Ms. Garlick.
Good evening, Madam Chair, members of the commission. I can keep this presentation pretty brief. I don't know if we have anyone signed up online at this point. I'll just go over the brief project request, and if you have any questions, I'll stand for questions. So this project is a request for a rezone and a height exception. The applicant is requesting to rezone from a C2 DC, which is general commercial with design review and Capitol Boulevard overlay, to a residential office with downtown design review, Capitol Boulevard overlay, and a development agreement. Conceptually, the plan is for a 5-story multifamily building, podium parking on the ground floor with a mix of uses, commercial, lobby, amenity space. The DA does ensure a mix of use, ties to the conceptual plan, access points, and the height exception here is for 5 feet. In the RO zone, we have a 65-foot maximum height. We're requesting 70 feet to take into account the architectural features of the building. With that, staff does recommend approval. This evening, you would be recommending to City Council the rezone request and a final motion on the height exception.
Great, thank you, Ms. Garlick. Next, we'll hear from the applicant. Please start with your name and address. You'll have up to 10 minutes.
Madam Chair, members of the commission, Jeff Wardle. My address is 251 East Front here in Boise, Suite 310. My associate has made a phenomenal PowerPoint that I just choose not to show you tonight because we are in agreement with the conditions set forth in the staff report. There are really only 3 things that I want to raise, and these go to the bigger issue here. First, the ROD zone is the appropriate use for this, but as you may recall with various prior applications that I brought in front of you, as we think about the city's zoning ordinance, we need to relook at the ROD zone and consider the 65-foot in height as problematic. Because as a practical matter, you guys are always getting asked for additional height. And the reason you're getting asked for additional height is the 65 feet just does not align with what it takes to build a multifamily structure. And in fact, the demarcating height is 75 feet because that's where we start to have some fundamental changes in our code. So as we go forward, we've raised this before, but we would strongly consider the city of Boise, when it looks at its ROD zone, to contemplate taking that height to 75 feet in height, just to allow you to be able to build, you know, a typical 5/1 or 6/1 and make it fit. The second thing is we were a little disappointed from the neighborhood association to fire off a letter so late in this process. And we want to highlight the fact that we view this as a mixed-use project, not just because there's a coffee shop, but because the owner and developer of this owns the retail that fronts on Capitol Boulevard on both sides of that intersection. Gardner Company and Dave Wally have brought this project forward because they own both the Papa Joe's building and the other little building there that's got the textbook exchange, and recognize the importance of reusing a surface parking lot to increase the residential density of this neighborhood. And then the third thing is we recognize the concerns that were articulated by some neighbors as well as the neighborhood association about parking, but we're not requesting any deviation from what the parking standards are. And in fact, we all, I think, know and appreciate the fact that we commit too many resources in this valley to cars and to parking. So we are in total agreement with the conditions of approval. Like I said, my associate Danielle Strollo made a phenomenal PowerPoint that I'm not going to bore you with, and we ask for any questions that you would have us answer, and we can have our design team up to do that. And we would request a recommendation of approval to the city council and approval of the conditional use permit to permit the parapets to exceed 65 feet in height. And again, that height exception is due to the fact that the mechanical shafts for the elevators require that additional height. And rather than just have it at a couple locations to provide architectural variation along the roof line and articulation, we've carried that height over in a couple other places. So with that, I'll stand for any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Wardle. Okay, great. Well, before we get to questions, I'll just ask to see if we have a representative from the Lusk District Neighborhood Association. Okay, seeing none, then we'll move to questions from the commission for staff or the applicant.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Moore.
So I have a couple of questions. So the first one is about the height extension. It looks like that's just about the mechanical. And it seems like in some city codes, that's included in kind of just their standard height restrictions, a certain amount of mechanical exceeding that to some extent. That's not included in our city code at all?
Madam Chair, Commissioner Moore, in the ROD zone, the 65 feet is the maximum height. It does not differentiate the mechanical units in the code.
Thank you. And Madam Chair.
Commissioner Moore.
An additional, so I'm looking at the site plan, in particular, the plan on page 479 of our packet. And it looks like there's some, and this may just be where the levels are fitting. There's some parking stalls that don't have drive aisles. Could you kind of walk us through that a little bit?
Yeah, Madam Chair, Commissioner Moore. There is a proposal for tandem parking within the Podium parking structured space. The tandem spaces are something that will ultimately be decided and reviewed with our design review application. With the initial conceptual plan, staff is supportive of the tandem design as it does not impact neighboring properties. And really the nature of this proposal for essentially student housing, that there is, the nature of it is that students could park for a longer term. In this case, proximity to BSU and public transportation would also support the use of the tandem.
And Madam Chairman, Commissioner Moore, if I may, I mean, we have experience managing tandem stalls, and it's one of those things that we're sensitive to but for the reasons staff has articulated, I don't think that you would necessarily propose tandem spaces, but we think it enables you, because of the nature of this use and the nature of the design, we think it's appropriate and it's manageable, because these are not uses where if you are having to tandem park, you have that degree of immediacy that you would in another parking structure.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Danley.
A couple questions. First for the applicant, and that is, by my read, I see this 1950 square foot, which essentially it reads to me like a lobby space. Is that contextually accurate, first of all?
Madam Chairman, Commissioner Danley, yes. The space that orients towards Lusk is lobby and tenant amenity, tenant service.
Okay, so the true mixed use element of this is essentially the 1,200 square foot ish proposed coffee shop. My question is, so that's basically 60 by 20 kind of a space, right? Is it possible for that to be larger, to be a little more significant given the scope and size of this building?
Madam Chairman, Commissioner Danley, I have to defer, and I'll invite our architect up, but remember, this owner also owns the 7,500 square feet of retail that's also right there. And so when staff and everybody goes, oh, it needs to be a mixed use project, we recognize that there needs to be mixed use elements because it needs to enliven the parking, it needs to enliven the streetscape. That's why we're doing it. But the notion that I think you have to look at the entire block, and you already have other retail services there which will be benefited to it. So we've been highly sensitive to what Lusk looks like, that at the ground floor, it's going to have the lobby. You're not going to have the parking there, and that we're going to have that portion there that is for the coffee shop. But because of the dimensions of the site and to be able to make the parking fit, as a practical matter, there's not a lot more retail space that needs to be had right there. And again, I can also have Mr. Wally comes up, who owns both retail buildings on both frontages of Capitol Boulevard there. Part of the rationale for bringing this project forward is that when you look at all three of those properties, you're going to have this building plus the existing 15,000 square feet of retail that are right there at that intersection. And we think it's appropriate to look at it in toto, because we're not necessarily convinced that when you look at the difficulties that some of the other retail uses have had that front onto Ann Morrison Park Boulevard, such as the former Senior Frogs, cheerleaders, all that other stuff, that really the retail space needs to be oriented towards Capitol Boulevard. It needs to be oriented towards Boise State.
Okay, Madam Chair.
Commissioner Danley.
Hopefully I word this correctly. Last week, we had on the consent agenda, another item, another large building, another student housing project, same neighborhood. This is 282 bedrooms, if the calculation is correct. And I know that the Lusk Neighborhood Association, the residents that live there full-time, not semester or even for 1 year at a time, continually say and express their concern that none of the units are able to be leased to folks who are non-students. And so I'm wondering if you can address that. Is there any opportunity for anything like that?
Madam Chair, I'm going to have Dave Wally come up and address the user mix and why.
Mr. Wally, please start with your name and address for the record.
David Wally, 4904 North Mountainside Lane, Boise, Idaho. To your question, I sit both on the Foundation Board for Boise State University as well as the School of Business and Economics. What we have is a lack of student housing opportunities in that second, third, and fourth year in and around the campus to eliminate as much of the drive in and out as possible. We also don't see that college population and young adult population in their first years out of college are really good mixes. And Boise State would like for us, as we're doing this, to be something that would gear towards the university in a very educational, positive format, which is to have, some level of their guidance in what we build, how we build it. So we're staying in close contact with them on that front. They're not going to be happy with us mixing their population with just anybody.
Okay, thank you. Do we have any further questions? Okay, yes. Yeah, Mr. Wally, please go ahead. If there's more to add to that answer.
We are also the developer of the Addison, and that is a more mixed population, also within walking distance of the university.
Thank you. Okay, seeing no further questions, We'll now move to public testimony. Do we have anybody in person or online that would like to testify on this item? Please virtually raise your hand or just come on up to the podium. Okay, seeing none, then at this point, we would move back to rebuttal from the applicant, which would be 5 minutes, but there's not been rebuttal. Okay, so that let the record show that the applicant is waiving that opportunity to rebut. And with that, we'll close the public portion of the hearing and the item is now before the commission.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Moore.
I move that we recommend approval of CAR 21-27 and approve CUP 21-48 with the amended development agreement. Okay, give me 1 second. On packet page 465, the development standards, item 4A, I move that we amend the development agreement to state the Luskin and Morrison Park frontages shall consist of multifamily amenities and commercial space with street activation, and just remove the or. In addition to all the terms and conditions as written in the staff reports.
Okay. Do we have a second?
Second.
Great, we have a second from Commissioner Danley. Commissioner Moore, would you like to start the discussion?
Absolutely. So my biggest, I support the project. I understand, with the direct connection to the university, student housing right here really does make sense. And I understand the developer looking at this kind of as a holistic sort of area with the commercial and the residential right there. That also does make sense to me. I do like that kind of coffee shop area. I think that makes sense right there. It connects that sort of existing commercial and ties it back into Morrison Park, kind of draws people besides students down there a little bit further. And I think that that's important. My reason to remove the or in the development agreement is just to make sure that that commercial space really does stay, because I do think it's important to try to get people a little bit further in terms of the commercial space and mix those uses a little bit further, even if it is so minor as that small coffee shop. I think that's important. So with that, I'll support the project.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Danley.
So I'm going to support the project, but I'm doing it a little bit reluctantly. And the reasons are, one, I'm a little bit disappointed that we didn't hear from the folks who wrote in and the specific issues that were raised in our staff report. But my hesitation is not necessarily with this project. It's bigger picture than that. And I personally feel like BSU is not solving their own housing problems. And what I see happening is the Lusk neighborhood that's where all of the housing is going. That's where all the student housing is going. And so we ask the neighborhood association to participate and give us their thoughts. But it seemed like to me that neighborhood is just taking more and more of the brunt of this student housing. And that's not any statement against the students whatsoever, but it's definitely not a permanent home. It's not a resident per se. It's more of the dorm type of a feel. You're renting out by the room. And it's not just this application. So it's a bigger picture that I think that we as a city, I hope can recognize this, and we need workforce housing. This area is so incredibly valuable to the proximity of right where we are in downtown. It's a hop, skip, and a jump. It's a transit. It's a short one-hop bus ride to get into downtown. That's the type of housing that we also need, not just student housing. And again, not against the applicant here, but this area, to me, I'm hopeful that we start to see more permanent resident housing, not just student housing. So that's me on a soapbox. I apologize, but ultimately I will support the project.
Great. Okay. So, Commissioner Moore, if I can just clarify with you, the change is to change and or to just and, is that right?
Correct, on item.
On 4A, the
Um,
Luskin and Morrison Park frontages shall consist of multifamily amenities, that line?
Yes.
Okay, great. Okay, so we have before us a motion to recommend approval of CAR 21-27 at 818 West Ann Morrison Park Drive and approve CUP 21-48, the conditional use permit, and to with the change in the development agreement for number 4A, that would read the Luskin and Morrison Park frontages shall consist of multifamily amenities and commercial space with street activation.
Madam Chair.
Yes, did I get that wrong?
4B. Sorry, I made it really simple for you. I apologize.
Wait, sorry, say that again.
It would be item 4B.
4B. Got
I
it.
apologize for making that really complicated.
No, we're good. Okay. Thank you. Okay, in development agreement, section 4B, as in boy. Okay, so with that, if there's no further discussion, will the clerk please call the vote?
Dunn,
Aye.
Squires,
Aye.
Blanchard,
Aye.
Moore,
Aye.
Stanley,
Aye.
all in favor, motion carries.
Thank you, and this meeting is adjourned.